Welcome to She Moves Bravely, a podcast dedicated to empowering women through stories of resilience, courage, and success. I'm your host, Shantae Dent. Today, I have the honor of introducing you to a woman who moves bravely. Her name is Toni LaShaun. Toni, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Shantae.
Yes, my pleasure. Well, I'm excited because we have already had half of a show take place by chatting and talking and having laughs and all the things, talking about everything under the sun, from the kids to the hair to the weather. But now I just want to allow the audience to know what I've already come to know about you. Such an incredible woman. Just want you to start by sharing your story, the transitions you've made, the brave steps that you've taken, and what's led you to where you are today. And so I'm passing the baton to you, Toni.
All right. Well, I'm Toni LaShaun Wortherly. For as long as I can remember, I've been a perfectionist and a worrywart. Um, when I was 8 years old, after watching many, many episodes of The Cosby Show, I decided that I wanted to be Claire Huxtable when I grew up. And I was going to be an attorney, and I was going to be a wife, and I was going to be a mom to a whole bunch of kids, and just running it all, maybe married to a doctor like on that show, and just
Mhm.
the woman that has it all. And I told anyone who would listen that I was going to be an attorney when I grew up. I wasn't quite sure what kind of attorney or what it was exactly that attorneys did, because you didn't see a whole lot of lawyering on that show. But I
Mhm.
just knew that that character seemed powerful and she seemed to have everything pretty much under control. And I wanted to be that person. So as I got older, that's really the path that I pursued. And when I say the path that I pursued, I literally put all my eggs in that basket. In high school, we had a courtroom in my high school, and I took the law studies and legal systems course in that courtroom. When I went to college, I started out as a political science major, transferred schools, and then actually ended up with a legal studies major, which was what we termed at UCF baby law school, basically taking undergrad versions of the courses that you would take in law school. So I graduated from college at the age of 20. I wore myself completely out by going through high school and college that fast. And I told my parents a couple of weeks before I graduated from college, I'm going to have to take a year off. If I go to law school now, like, I don't want you guys to be disappointed. I'm going to go. I know if I go now, I'm burnt out and I'll probably end up either taking a long time doing it or dropping out completely. So I said, I just want to take a year off. I'll find a job. I'll do whatever. And I found some temp jobs, but the main thing I found while I took that year off was a husband.
Look at there.
So at 21, I got married. And so then I ended up taking a second year off, but I did apply to law school. I went to Florida State University for law school. I got a grant to go to law school, so I did not have to pay any tuition out of pocket. I got a stipend every month that covered most of my expenses, and then my husband was working to pay for other expenses. And so the the caveat of that grant was that after I graduated from law school, I had to practice law for 3 years in the state of Florida.
Mm.
So this is where things kind of took a little bit of a turn. I'm 21, 22 when I started law school. And probably towards the middle of that first year of law school, my marriage started falling apart for various reasons. We met in church, ironically,
Mm.
but there were a lot of unchristian-like behaviors on both of our parts that led to the demise of my marriage. So by the end of my first year of law school, I was actually doing my first case, which was my divorce, my dissolution of marriage. I got with one of my law school mentors, and he walked me through the process. and I filed for my own divorce at the end of my first year of law school. And I had dealt with anxiety, like I said, my whole life, but in that summer, when in between where I was getting a divorce and I was going into my second year of law school, and it was very difficult. It was 2001, and that's when 9/11 happened. There was just so many things going on, and my anxiety was at an all-time high. That was when I started seeing a therapist through our program, our health program at the school, and told him some of the things that were going on. And he referred me to a psychotherapist, and I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. It had been mentioned before with a previous therapist, but it hadn't really been pursued. I just kind of did some cognitive behavioral therapy when I was in undergrad. But this time they were like, we think that you would benefit from being on medicine. I was in school. I could not concentrate. I could not do what I needed to do to function to get through law school. So I, you know, got my diagnosis. I started medication. Things started looking better. And all of a sudden, I had all this clarity. And halfway through law school, I was like, I don't want to do this. This is
Mm.
not the career that I want for the rest of my life. And I don't know what I'm going to do because I literally put all of my eggs in one basket.
That was
And
all
now
you knew.
that was all I knew. And now I had to make a plan because I was not trying to pay back the tens of thousands of dollars that I was going to have to pay back if I quit. So I pushed through. I was like, I'm going to have a law degree. The thing that I don't know if for people who've never been to law school, the thing about law school is people think you learn about the law in law school, but what law school really teaches you is how to read intensively, how to write and think critically, which are skills that can translate into any career. So I was determined that I was going to finish law school. I had my obligation to practice law for 3 years. So the next year and a half was about figuring out what area of law I could practice where I wouldn't completely and totally hate my life for those 3 years. I decided not to try to get a job at a law firm because I knew if I got a job at a law firm and was like a junior partner on a, an associate and then a junior partner and on that kind of track, making that kind of money, that I would probably stay miserable just to keep the lifestyle. So
Mm.
instead, what I did was I moved in with my parents. I had an internship where I did family law. And like I said, I had done my own divorce. So I became very familiar with family law. And I decided that I was going to hang out my own shingle and open my own family law practice. And I did a little bit of entertainment law on the side because I've been a performer for just about as long as I wanted to be an attorney. So I wanted to do something that was kind of the fun side of the law and then the money earning side of the law. So the family law was the money earning side. And then the entertainment law, I'm in Jacksonville, Florida. There's not a whole lot of entertainment companies here, but there's some movie companies that I worked with and some music production companies that I worked with to do contracts, patents and copyrights, trademarks and things like that. So yeah, so I had that career for 3 years. I did not always have clients. I was working out of my bedroom in my parents' house slash whatever table was available at a Starbucks or a Panera that my clients would meet me at. Um, Anytime I had to go to court, I knew what I was doing. I was very confident. That's why I chose that area of law. So I knew what I was doing, but I would literally get sick every time I walked into the courthouse, physically ill every time. So practicing law started affecting my health, mental and physical. And I was like, this is actually going to cut off at year 3. So while I was practicing law, I was also substitute teaching and eventually was substitute taught mostly at the high school where I went. And then they got a new principal and they had some job openings and 3 years had gone by and they said, do you want to come in and teach here? And I was like, yep, that's what I'm going to do. So I transitioned, I shut down, I let all my clients know I'm no longer going to be practicing law. I'm going to be going into teaching full time. I will go ahead and, make sure all of your cases are resolved to a point where we can either transfer you to another attorney, or some of the cases had closed or got to a closing point, and let them know they could get their files, and shut down the law offices of Toni L. Wortherly, and became Miss Wortherly, high school teacher. And that's what I've been doing for the past 18 years.
That's quite the journey, Toni, from from knowing early on I'm going to be the next Claire Huxtable. You were able to get a glimpse, a taste, but so many years in, you halt, breaks. This might not be what I thought it would be. And here's what hit me. You said when I would go into the courtroom physically, I mean, it's one thing where mentally we're just, I don't know about this, and we're toiling back and forth in our mind, but your body, your whole being was talking to you. Mm. And you listened. And I'm glad you listened. Now, you went from practicing law to high school teacher. And so you mentioned you substituted. And so I imagine, and perhaps not, please clarify that transition. Did it feel seamless because you substituted? And so it was a nice overlap, or what was that transition like for you?
Well, this is where, like, looking back, God was definitely all up and through this.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
when I was substitute teaching, it was mostly in the beginning, just, you go in for a teacher for a day and you're basically like glorified babysitting. But as I kept going back to the school, I was getting long-term sub positions. So I did actually have to become the teacher. And I subbed a lot for one of my former teachers, to the point where her students were calling me the assistant teacher because they saw me about just as much as they saw her. So we're both creative
Love
people.
it.
She was shooting commercials, so she would have to be gone for like 2 or 3 weeks at a time. So I would come in and sub for her for those 2 weeks. So with her, I learned how to lesson plan. I had to actually get up and teach the children. I didn't just hand them a worksheet and say, okay, you have to do this and your teacher will grade it when you get back. I learned how classroom management. I learned how to build a relationship with the students. I started helping out with some of the activities at school. And so that became a big part of my life, was like building the relationship and the rapport with the students and its staff, and through doing different activities and teaching as a substitute more on like a long-term basis than just like, I'm here for a day for this one teacher. So that's how I actually got noticed by the staff that was there. So when the new principal came in, the teacher that I did that for, she met him on his first day and said, this is who you need to hire. Whatever opening you have, she can fill it. You need to hire her because we need her on the staff. And so the transition was not that difficult. That first year, she and I actually co-taught together. So we had, I think I have like 6 classes. 5 of those classes I taught with her. So I actually got to watch her, like, first period, I would watch her deliver the lesson. And then second period, I would deliver lesson. So I got that whole first year that I was teaching to really, really learn the everyday, day-to-day teaching. That's why I say I know God was in it, because that transition was not as difficult for me to go into the classroom.
Well, I love that the way the way it unfolded, being able to first even have that level of recommendation, being able to come under the wings of your former teacher. I love that setup. Now, I want to give you an opportunity to share with the audience what I already know, but connect these dots, because you go from being married during your break. You took a little break before you continued to law school, and the marriage dissolves. You finish, you continue, you move on after law school, go in a different direction, you become a teacher. You touched on it, singing, the entertainment. And we also had an opportunity to talk about your passion right now, what's near and dear to your heart based off of your own journey. And would love for you to connect those dots for our listeners.
So when I mentioned before, like the Claire Huxtable thing was not just about being an attorney. It was about being a wife and a mom. My parents got married after knowing each other for 6 months. They were 18 and 20. My sister got married when she was 19. So when I was 20 and not in a relationship and not married, I felt like I was old because in my family, we get married at under 20. And I'm like a spinster. And, that anxiety kicked in of like, am I ever going to get married? I'd had one long-term relationship. We realized that we were better off as friends. So we, stopped dating each other and just went back to being friends. And I had dated people on and off, but nothing ever worked out. So when I met my ex-husband, like literally a few weeks in, he was like, I know I want to marry you. And in my mind, and this is where anxiety comes into play, my mind said to me, if you don't do this, no one's ever going to want to marry you again. Right. And so that really was kind of the motivation behind saying, yes, I'll marry you, and ignoring a whole bunch of glaring issues that we had between each other. Because I was like, hey, we're both Christians. We'll figure this out. That is not how that works.
Not so. You're
Found
like,
out the
it's
hard way.
not that simple.
Not
There's a
that
bit more
simple.
to it than that.
Yes. So, got married with the hopes that, I got married at 21. I would graduate from law school at 25. And hopefully, like I had in my mind, I was like, we're going to try to get pregnant by the time I'm headed out of law school. And then we'll have babies like every 2 to 3 years. I wanted at least 4. But that all came crashing and burning like the halfway through the first semester of law school when things started going crazy. And by the end of that first year, I was divorced. Like people met me with one name, and then I came back to school the next year and had a different name. Um, so like I mentioned, that was when I really started having struggles with anxiety, and it was all the things. It was the divorce, it was situationships that I was involved in. We didn't have that term back then, but
We did.
looking back, that is exactly what they were. They were situationships that I had back then that were causing anxiety. It was the schoolwork that was causing anxiety, not knowing what I was going to do because I realized that what I had told everybody I would do. And I mentioned I was a perfectionist, but I'm also a people pleaser. So I didn't want to let anybody down. My whole family was like, she's going to be the first lawyer in the family. Like everybody was excited about this. I could not let my community down by not finishing this. But what happened in all of that between my marriage, the situationships, law school, anxiety, everything was that I lost me. I didn't know who I was. And maybe I'll chalk it up to like my brain not being fully developed. But at 25, when I left law school, was when I first started to actually really take hold of who am I?
Yeah.
Outside of what I've told anybody that I'm going to be, outside of what I think people want me to be, outside of what I think the parameters are for me as a woman in the society. Who do I want to be? Like, if it's all stripped away and it's just me, who is that? And that was a crazy part of my life because I did not have an answer to that question. So that was the part of my life where I was transitioning, where I'm practicing law and I'm substitute teaching and I'm trying to find it. In teaching, I found a part of that identity because I realized that I really love educating people. I just really love watching the process. I actually told my students today, I was like, I'm going to let you struggle with this, and you're going to think I'm mean because I'm not going to give you the answer.
Good.
But there is a process that needs to happen, and you need to struggle with it for a while, because after a while, you're going to start to figure out how the pieces fit together. And I don't want to disrupt that process too early because I want you to know that you can do it. And it's such a rewarding feeling to do that on a day-to-day basis. So right now where I am, 46, so we're like, it keeps like popping into my brain that I have been divorced for half my life now.
Half your
Like, I
life.
got divorced at
Yes.
23 and now I'm 46. So I've been divorced for half my life. I only had one real relationship after that. Again, like dated people on and off, but I've really not been on a date in like 7 years. Um, this is me, the girl who was supposed to have 4 kids by the time she turned, 35. I was supposed to have 4 kids and be married and be a wife. I had to figure out, like, if it's not in the plan for me to be a wife, if it's not in the plan for me to be a mom, who am I?
Who am I?
Who is Toni?
Isn't that powerful? Because you mentioned you had it laid out. You made it plain, wrote it down, had the dates and the time frames and everything. Oh, but this powerful question. When you asked yourself, and I want every listener to ask themselves this question. You asked yourself without, and then you list it. The list goes on, and that list will look different for everyone. But without A, B, and C, X, Y, and Z, one, two, and three, who am I? And I love your vulnerability, Toni. You said in that moment, I did not have an answer. But what unfolds so beautifully is you didn't stop there. You could have easily settled for what was already working in a sense, right? In a sense, it was working internally. You had that struggle, but on the surface, gosh, from a distance, people were like, look at Toni, that career. Wow. But I love that you paid attention and you listened to that inner voice and you knew I could choose to stay here, but I know that there's more, there's something else, and I might not be able to answer this question today, who am I, without, but you knew there was a different answer, right? And you proceeded, you took a step. And so you were talking about how it of course affected you mentally, the mental concerns and how you took care of it, but and it's leading you or has led you to this place where it's a part of your passion now.
Yes. So, um, mental health struggles, like I said, have been a part of my life. I didn't know when I was growing up. Like I said, I was just, everybody's like, oh, she's just a little worrywart. Like, it was kind of like an endearing part of my personality when I was little. Like that, if it was storming outside, the sky was falling. When I was 18, I was laying in my bed at college and I thought I was having a heart attack. Found out years later that that's called a panic attack. It's not a heart
Mm.
attack. So it's something that's been like it, it's been a part of my life for as long as I could remember. I've seen different therapists. I've tried different therapies, whether it be cognitive behavioral or medication and different things and different techniques to try to deal with my anxiety and any other mental health issue that comes up. The things that have been most successful for me therapeutically have been artistry and my faith
Yeah.
and a great therapist. I
Mhm.
always tell people
That's
I
the
got Jesus
that's their combo.
and a therapist. Okay. Like I it took
Okay,
a
yes.
while to get there. It's like I tried these things individually, but I've had just so many things happen over just in the last, and I think everybody has in the last 5 years. We've
Yeah.
all had like
Yeah.
just a crazy last 5 years. Like in 2019, we didn't even know what we were about to head into.
Mhm.
Um, so, in 2020, I finally felt like, okay, I am at a place where I know who I am. I'm comfortable in my own skin. I was, going to Nashville to go to songwriting retreats and nurture that part of my creativity. I'm the praise team leader at my church, so I get to, lead worship on Sundays, and that was really healthy for me. As a teacher, I finally was in like the subject areas that I felt most confident about. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to take care of the personal side of things. Like, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to try to, get on some dating apps or go to social events. Did I mention I'm like a shy introvert who doesn't like confrontation? That's the other reason. Like when you're shy, you're an introvert, you don't like confrontation and you have anxiety. I don't know why I ever thought I could be a lawyer. Like that is like a ticking time bomb if you're practicing law, unless you're literally just sitting behind a desk pushing paper all day, which is not the type of law for me. So in any case, that was just a little sidebar. I was like, I don't know what I'm thinking.
I'm happy for you. I'm glad you listened to that inner voice and went in a different direction, Toni.
But music was really helping me. And so I was like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna get out there. I had like all these trips planned and things planned. And then in February of 2020, my grandfather died suddenly. He was 86, but he had had health problems, but he was like on the mend. Like we had all just went to celebrate Thanksgiving with him that Thanksgiving before that. And then they called me down to the office at work one day and my sister was there. And I was like, I knew something was wrong because why would my sister be at my job? They like pulled me into an office and it just shattered my whole world in that moment because my dream was that my children would have a relationship with my grandparents. My father's mother passed away before I was born, but I grew up with his dad and my mom's parents. And they were like awesome grandparents, especially when I got older. Like I feel like a lot of people, they have a really great relationship with their grandparents when they're kids, but like my grandmother became one of my best friends when I was grown. And my grandfather too. And the thing about it is we literally would say like 3 words to each other. We would just sit in each other's presence. And I wanted my kids to know that feeling and that love. So the day that he passed away, he was my last grandparent to pass away. And that just shattered me because I was like, I don't know what else there is honestly to live for. Like I'm not going to have children that get to know that get to know any of my grandparents like that. Like, I don't know, like, what is even the purpose of me? So then came COVID and several more deaths and just a whole bunch of things. And I really did a deep dive into my songwriting then, and really was working on my craft. And that's when I wrote Strength to Soar. Um, it was in February of 2021. I wrote it, got with my producer friend. He did a track for it. I sang it at the church a couple months later, and just the feeling in the room and just the reactions afterward. I've never wanted to be the artist. I wanted to be in the background, writing music for people, writing music with people, but I didn't really want to be the artist. I had recorded some music before, and then I was like, that's not me. To be out in front of things. But I was like, I feel like I have to put this out there because there's so many people that are going through. And so that song was really born out of like a deep grief-filled depression, which was just another mental health issue. And a few months later, I said, well, if I'm going to release that one, I'm probably going to release some more songs. And every song that I have on the EP that I released in September of 2022 is related to some mental health issue that I've had.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are suffering and they don't want to talk about it because they feel like they are the only ones who are going through what they're going through. And specifically, yes, they might be the only ones that are going through that very specific thing. There are a lot of us out here who are struggling from day to day. So I'm so passionate about just shining a light on that and educating people first and foremost that they're not alone, and then that there are ways to deal with these issues. We talk a lot about mental illness, but we don't talk a lot about mental health.
Powerful.
And my sister is a therapist, so I've gotten a little bit of free therapy. But I also have my therapist that I was going to over the last like few months. And just in that time, like the transition in my mindset, like I used to just be like, this is who I am. Like I'm gonna have anxiety, I'm gonna have panic attacks. This is who I am. I just have to learn to live with it. But I wrote a song long time ago, right after I got out of law school, called Don't You Worry,
Mhm.
that I was writing for me to remind myself not to
Mhm.
worry.
Yeah.
And that song has had several iterations. With the one that I released on my EP, it's the most popular song on my EP, the most popular video out there. And I know why that is, because so many people are dealing with anxiety. So with that, I wrote a devotional and a devotional with a journal. And again, I have several devotions on YouVersion's Bible app, but Don't You Worry is the one that's the most popular. And that right there let me know there's a lot of people that are out there struggling. And as a Christian, it's hard because you're like, I'm not supposed to worry. I'm supposed to depend on God for everything. I'm supposed to have faith. And if I'm worrying, then I'm not having faith. And now I'm being a bad Christian. And now I'm worried about being a bad Christian.
After all,
It's like,
yeah.
it's just like a whole
Vicious
it's a
cycle.
whole cycle.
Mm.
It's a whole cycle. And so I finally got a therapist who looked me in the face and was like, stop doing that. And I was like, what?
Stop.
And he was like, you don't want to be like that, right? So stop. He was like, I'm not going to be able to take that part of you away from you because it is a part of who you are. But the way I was dealing with my anxiety was the issue. And so he taught me how to like listen to my anxiety, like actually listen to what that little voice of anxiety is saying. And if you really listen to your anxiety, you realize that your anxiety is not spitting a whole lot of facts.
Come on now.
I'm like, anxiety is like my broke best friend. Like it goes
Tell
with me
me. Say
everywhere.
it again. You're what?
It costs me a lot, but it doesn't.
The, the
Like,
broke best friend.
you know,
Yeah.
and he
Mm.
taught me to like to learn from it. He's like, you have to stop, and when you have that moment, listen to what it's saying. Okay, notice how that's making you feel.
Mm.
What is it indicating? Because it's the anxiety, all of our emotions, the good ones and the bad ones, are there for a reason. They're indicators.
Yes.
They're not truths, they're indicators of something else that's going on around us, whether that be a positive thing or a negative thing. So, what is that anxiety pointing out? What needs to be addressed?
Big difference there. Indicators versus truths. Pay attention, listen. It's telling you something. And after you figure out what it's telling you, the next step is to,
Then you got to limit it.
yeah.
Like, okay. Then you can limit your anxiety with the truth.
Mhm.
Okay. What is my anxiety telling me? My thing was I would have these moments where I would get anxious and I would just get soaked into that. And then I would just try to push past it.
Mm.
Like, you got to get over this. You got to move on with your life. You got too much to do. You got too many people depending on you. You don't have time for a panic attack right now. You don't have time for your anxiety right now. Just ignore it. Well, I don't know if you know this, but
No.
ignoring anxiety does not make it better.
No. Can I say it? I don't know if I say it on every episode, but I'll say it on this one. Denial leads to destruction.
Yes, 100%. So I finally learned in the last 4 or 5 months to like embrace it, to listen to it, to learn from it, and then to limit it by, you know, noticing what it's saying and then actually dissecting that. Like, is that true? Will that actually happen? Probably not. And the other way to limit it is through gratitude. Just stopping yourself and thinking about, instead of thinking about all of the things that I have to do that are weighing me down, think about all of the positive things that are going on or the positive outcomes that are going to happen because of what you're doing. It
And Toni,
stops it dead in its tracks.
it stops it. Okay, so absolutely. That's my next question because I imagine when you go in that order, you're stronger. You develop and you're creating a toolbox. And so when you feel anxious, you learn that number one, I'm not alone. And number two, there is a way to get through this. I don't have to stay stuck in this anxious space where I'm paralyzed with this feeling or this emotion. I can feel it. You should feel it. Don't deny it. As you said, there are times where you in the past, you just keep moving. They're relying on me. The people pleaser tendencies. I've been there. I can raise two hands and two feet for that one. But I love that you utilized your support. And that's one thing I want to reiterate because we chuckled, but it's true. Oftentimes, as believers, we will minimize the benefit of therapy. And I'll say it is true with anybody in any field, even with churches. Like there could be good ones and bad ones, you know. So you do want to be careful and not connect with anyone who is a therapist. But I do wholeheartedly believe, as I've had my seasons of meeting with a psychologist, a rape crisis counselor, because I knew that there was great benefit in the tools and the resources that they understood that I didn't. I knew that connecting with them would help me process and progress in my journey to becoming whole and healthy. And so, what an incredible journey you've had, Toni, because again, let's just backtrack. You go from your dream, your aspiration to getting a taste of it and then realizing, maybe not. You listened to this inner voice, even though there was great avenues in terms of your transition, but there was still, as you mentioned, the family was depending on you and looking to you. And then you're like, wait, well, not anymore. You know, that's no longer going to be a part of my story. You finished. I commend you that 3 year period in law, but you listen to that inner voice that said finding your true self has a lot to do with you going in a different direction. That's a brave move right there. And not only that, I want everyone to really take note. Toni, you didn't stop right there. You could have just, okay, I moved on. I'm in this dream career. I'm connecting. I'm advancing. But even so, you continued to pay attention to what was really going on. You knew there was areas of development, and then to me, I don't know, it's the icing on the cake, singing as a form of expressing. And I okay, so Toni, you tell them how to get in touch with you because I want to tell strength to soar. Look, just go and find that on YouTube. But Toni, I love that song. I listen to it. It's so powerful. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm just in awe and amazed of how your journey has transpired. You're still on the journey, aren't we all? But I commend you for bravely taking those steps and listening to that inner voice and following suit because it's made you this incredible woman you are today. And not only that, you get to, how about this, show up and impact the lives of the next generation. And so, as you develop and become the better, greater version, more powerful, influential version of yourself, you get to spread all of that to the high schoolers that you are privileged to connect with on a daily basis and teach. I wish all of our teachers were like you, Toni. But how can our audience and how can our listeners get in touch with you?
So the best way to get in touch with me is through my website. It is tonilashaunmusic.com, ToniLashaun music.com. And there you can see the projects I'm working on. You can get the links to all the music that I have released. I'm a songwriter too, so I have several songs that I've written that are there for people to listen to snippets of those, if mainly for artists if they're interested in recording those songs. And then I'm also doing some speaking and podcasts and different things that I've been talking about. My information about my books and things like that are on there. The devotions that I have for each of my songs, except for Strength to Soar. The Strength to Soar one is strictly on my website, but the devotions for Don't You Worry, 100,000 Heartbeats, You Chose Me, and Overcome, those are all on the YouVersion Bible app. So that's anybody that has Bible app on their phone, those are free to access. And yeah, there's contact pages. My social media and Instagram is at Toni LaShaun Music. So that's the easiest one to find me on. That one is mostly just all about the music. My other pages there have some of my personal stuff on there, but yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I imagine there's so much more to learn about you, Toni. And so I would highly encourage you all to connect with Toni and utilize her gifts, her resources. Toni, thank you for saying yes to your purpose, yes to your calling. No doubt you will continue to make an impact in the lives of everyone that you reach through your songs, through your devotions, and those students, those precious lives, our future. Thank you, Toni. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.